News Talk 98.9, The Roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Welcome to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning.
I'm Allan Gilbreth, darkoakmedia.com.
And I'm Maximilian. And to all our boys and guys and gals in blue, I'd like to wish you a very happy start of National Donut Week.
Hey, wait a minute. What are you insinuating, Max? Are you saying the police go to the donut store?
I'm about to have a great week.
Okay, National Donut. Finally, he brings us something epic. Okay, excellent. So, Donut Week is bound to get people involved today. I'm thinking so.
What is your favorite weird combination? I'm going to say like bacon or whatever for people.
Yeah, we want to know. So, get in touch with us.
Or do we want to know?
I
we
do.
want to know. We want to know.
Okay. All right. That's a good one. So, and no explanation is really needed. I mean, we all know when we have our favorite donut spots. Everybody, I think I know one here in East Memphis that everybody likes to gravitate towards. So,
unless you want to talk about Captain Hanson Gregory, who created the donut.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll see. Max, we got a full day ahead of us, so calibrate your enthusiasm, to quote the director from Andor. Hey, before we set the table, though, we do have to apologize for not being here last week. It's 100% Allan's fault. He was out shooting a cowboy movie.
Well, yeah.
All right. Well, how did that go? Is it confidential? I mean, are things, because I know these movie projects sometimes you can't say much.
It's a little confidential, but yeah, I got to have a lot of fun as a bartender and got to hang out in on the far side of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, at a hidden location with a pre-built Western town on it. So.
Well, it was pretty cool. So I'm sure as the editing comes together and all, maybe we'll get. Allan sent me a shot of the tavern. It looked pretty good. I mean, it looked fairly period accurate as far as I could tell.
Yeah, we did a lot of cleaning pre-shoot.
Right. And did you do any stunts? Because I know that's one of your things, like breaking people's face over the bar or something. Or
I was instrumental in setting up what they call blocking the stunt or the bump. Blocking the bump. But did I actually do any this time? No.
Okay. All right. Well, so Allan was out having fun. I mean, you can't fault a guy for having an opportunity to shoot a movie. So as it comes together, though, you'll be bringing us details.
Yeah, there's going to be a music video out of it and everything.
Okay, cool. All right. And real quick, just so everybody knows, the Cubs are still in first place right now. So, it's shaping up to be a good baseball year for me. Hey, Allan, this is before you throw the microphone at me, this is a long overdue visit. We finally have some of our friends coming in from Groundworks.
Absolutely.
So they're going to be here at the second hour of the show. And so if there's any issues you have with the foundation of your home, and we're talking basements, crawl spaces, slabs, and things that maybe you don't know whether you have issues, but you suspect something's not right. Well, it might be your foundation.
Cracks, crooked windows, doors that don't close right. All of these are in their wheelhouse.
Exactly. So it's a great day to get in touch with us about that. We'll have experts on air to talk with you about that. So, and also, well, Allan's had a pretty busy week. It didn't, even though he was out, making a movie, it didn't, you didn't have the rest of the week off. You still had to work and take care of projects. And so, among other things, there was some tile leveling technology that you had, that you implemented, that sounded like it was worthy of discussion.
There's some new tiling tech out there that I think we really need to talk about.
Yeah, I think so too. We have, I have a scary tool tale. It's not my tool tale. It's a tale from it's a tale of our neighbors about pressure washer woes. We'll probably get to that sooner than later. I think I sent you the photo evidence,
you did.
Allan. So
you did.
We have more, and we're not going to over-tease because, like I said, we want to leave room for your interaction. So, like we said, get in touch with us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline, 901-683-0989, especially if you want to brag about your favorite donut. But before we get to any of those things, let's get to our must-have item of the week. I suppose this is items, or maybe it's one item, but I mean, Allan, this is as straightforward as you can get, but, you can let people know what I'm holding up here.
You're holding up your pre-packaged drill kit, but I'm going to throw in, you bought the right one this time.
Yeah.
Because these have hex stems.
Exactly. That's the key here. So There's 24 drill bits. Let me do my math. Yeah, 24. Okay, I had it right.
Right.
Well, if you've been listening to Tool Talk for the last, year, I finally had to concede that Allan had a really good point about some of these battery-powered tools. And I have just become one of my favorite go-to tools, and I probably literally use it every day, is my battery-powered ratcheting drill.
The Terminator.
Exactly. It's called the Terminator. That thing has drilled some pretty impressive holes and drilled it and put in some pretty. I mean, I've been drilling in 5.5 inch decking screws into pretty substantial boards. So
You pose an interesting query though, Allan. Why is it important that it has a hex stem versus just a standard?
Aha.
Well, we were about to get into that, Max, because this is key. So they all have the hex stem. They're not. They're are drill
not
bits,
rounded.
and they're not round at the bottom. You can just take it out, slide it right into that hex head on the drill.
Right. Because basically what you're looking at is an impact drill or a hammer drill. And what that means is it slams slightly each time. So while this is the weird thing. So like you have your standard screwdriver drill, you pull the trigger, and it makes consistent torque, aka how hard it's going to turn one direction.
Right.
That is not how an impact item works. An impact item works by literally beating it, because it just goes a tiny little bit and comes back, goes a tiny bit more and comes back, a tiny bit more and comes back. What that does, any car mechanic will tell you, that rusted up bolt has got no chance.
Yeah.
Now, against consistent pressure, it can provide consistent resistance, which is how you end up tearing bolts off.
Well, I was about to say, Max, because one of the things for one thing, this drills cleaner holes when you have that.
Yes.
Especially if you're boring holes. Like if you have a boring bit, you get really clean holes when it's stuttering like that.
That kind of makes me think a little bit. I just had a discussion with my sensei last week. He was talking about how a professional martial artist, the second they sense tension in their opponent, they're just going to go right to a new technique. So it's kind of like the impact driver or the hammer drill, because it's like once it senses tension, all right, I'm going to back off a little bit and go into something new.
I think he's not altogether
in an
wrong.
odd sort of, in a bizarre sort of way, I have to say Max is on topic.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly how these items work. They work with that bouncing ratchet action. And what that does is increase tension, release tension, increase tension, release tension, has a tendency to, as we quote say, break things loose.
Right.
Or in the event that we're drilling through something really hard, tile, concrete, really
4x4s,
countertops.
whatever. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What this does is it takes the ripping action out of it, because nothing is going that far. It stops and starts and stops and starts. Now you can't do that with a cylindrical contact point.
What do you mean?
AKA, so your original drill, the original drill bit was just a shank, a cylindrical piece of metal with a cutting edge carved into one end. Very easy to make. That's why the manufacturers made it that way. And your drill came with a chuck so that you could get in there and tighten it down by hand so that the little 3-prong holds would actually grip that drill hard enough to keep it in place.
And
it's not going to work with an impact hammer.
Right. And one other thing, Max, too, is the hex makes this a quick change drill bit. You can go,
yes.
Okay, I have my 1/4-inch drill bit now. I want to take it out, put the 3/8 in. It's really fast. You don't have to use a chuck to loosen or tighten. So
a bit of an aside, but I think that this hammer drill, based on my description, I'm starting to think it sort of represents a metaphor for our life, because it's like, when we encounter a problem, rather than just keep going through and causing further damage, we step back and then we go through it again.
Well, you're not wrong, man. I mean, especially in a construction site, you can't just plow through things. Sometimes you have to stop, reconsider, readjust, whatever. And that's why these hammer drill. That's why I've burned through 2 other drills on this big project, and I'm still cranking along with this impact driver. So I mean,
impact drills are great. However, They really, you literally have to have a hex mounting stem.
Right. Yeah. So this was great, and I mean, it was like $25.
Mm-hmm.
20. So what does that come to? It's basically $1 a drill bit. That ain't bad, man. Because if you buy a drill bit one at a time, it's going to be a lot more than that.
It's going to be a lot more. But the other thing that happens if you haven't bought a new set of drill bits in a while, oh my gosh, they work so much better.
Well,
just you get used to the dull bits, and that's just how they work. When you buy brand new, fresh, clean bits, it makes a massive difference to your job.
Well, the other thing too is, I mean, if I'm being honest here, after 6 or 7 years or so with your last drill bit set, they wind up all over the place. Like you open the box, half of them are gone. They're laying in the toolbox. They're in the bottom of your car. Who knows? So anyway, that's our great must-have item of the week. So, well, when we come back, boy, do I have it's kind of a scary Tool Tales, and then we want to find out what Allan did this week.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
The baler can flatten a car engine. It can cut off your arm and crush your entire body without skipping a beat. Yeah. How many people a year do you think get their arms cut off in a baler?
Baler, I hardly know her.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, you should know that today is National Donut Day, and we'd love to know what sort of donuts.
It's the start of the week.
It needs a whole week, so good donut stories, your favorite flavors, your favorite experiences. Max, I know you used to go to the donut store as a kid, right? I mean, everybody did.
I love those, like just basic glazed donuts that are a little bit more rich.
Yeah. Okay. And Allan, I'm sure, has opinions about food, anything to do with that. So, okay. So that's on the table. And later in the show, we're going to be visiting with our friends from Groundworks. So if you have any questions or concerns about your basement, your crawl space, or the foundation of your home, this is a good time to take advantage of their expertise. So you can get in touch with us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. All right, Max, let's shift gears here.
And now, Tool Tales with Tool Talk Radio.
Well, I have a scary tool tale, but Max, before that, you had actually a pretty good question, and I think this might actually be an ongoing series here because I thought it made a lot of sense. So,
well, Allan was bringing up the point of how like a fresh bit of drill bits is like could really do wonders for your job site experience, and it led me to the query of when are new tools better and when are old tools better? Like they each have their appropriate time. Like for example, you wouldn't shave your face with an old razor. You want a good fresh set of razor blades.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, so but then there's some tools where it almost seems like they're seasoned and you wouldn't trade them for your life, right?
That is so true.
You probably got several of those. I have some. So.
My favorite tool hanging in the garage right now is a 110-year-old handsaw from Sears and Roebuck Company. It was found in a demolition. We were demolishing an old barn, and it was still hanging in there. And I was like, well, all right, mine. It's going home with me. And then the big question comes up, well, how do you sharpen that thing?
How do you
that
take was
care
my
of
question. How do you sharpen a 100-year-old saw?
Well, the first thing I did was I took it home and I cleaned up the handle and all pretty, and then I sprayed the blade down with WD-40 real good. And then I got my infamous little needle nose pliers.
Right.
And went back and made sure that the teeth were not evenly lined up.
Now, somebody's probably going, wait, why would you want them not to be evenly lined up? And that's a very good point. Yeah.
If you look at how a handsaw works by the little teeth either being not the same sizes. Mm-hmm. You got some longer and shorter than others, certain designs, or you have them slightly offset from each other. In other words, first one leans slightly to the right, the next one leans slightly to the left.
Right.
And that's what provides the cutting action. Because as I point out, and it took me a while to get this through my head as a kid, but you cannot cut wood.
Okay,
It
here
can't
we
be
go.
cut. It cannot be cut. And the reason I say that is the only thing you can do is remove material and separate the pieces, because you're going to remove the width of that saw blade from them. And that's what provides your quote unquote your cut.
Okay.
This kind of reminds me of something that you said once before, where it's like the deadliest knife in your drawer isn't the sharp, it's the rusty. It's like the
dull one.
The
Yeah.
dull
because-
ones where you're going to hurt yourself.
because it's like you could say that the blade design is asymmetrical, kind of like a saw.
Well,
But that sounds like I mean, okay, I don't want people getting out there and bending it a quarter inch. I mean,
No,
you're
no.
talking a fraction.
we
of
are talking just barely. If you
look
go,
down the edge of the blade, you're like, okay, that one
as you
is-
go through your big box store sometime this weekend, walk over by the saw department and just pick one up and look down look down the edge, and you will see that the teeth are just slightly offset.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that to this was 20 years ago, so it was only a 90-year-old saw then. And went and cut a couple of nice dry tree limbs, and any surface rust rubbed right off. And so now it is well over a century old, and I absolutely still adore that handsaw, and
Yeah.
it works perfect.
and it's old, and maybe the steel is a little more tempered or
It's
something. Maybe
a
it was
little
not as
different steel
disposable.
configuration, and it's so yes, I run into I have a screwdriver, an old a demolition flathead screwdriver, actually designed to destroy stuff that is much older than you, Max.
I got a question, and maybe it's not even a question of is it better, but maybe it's just more of a preference. But any I would say blunt tool. Okay, like I'm thinking of your pry bar or a sledgehammer.
Oh,
I mean,
boy, my babies.
Is it part? I mean, maybe it's a stupid thing to think, but are you compressing the steel the more you use it? And I don't know if that's even a factor, or maybe it's getting worn into your hand grip or something like that.
I'm gonna. I hate to look at Max and give him any credit on this, but like with anything, the more often you use something, the more you become accustomed to the weight, how it feels, what it can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had, and we'll pick on the infamous, and you've seen this tool. It is a wrecking bar.
Oh yeah,
It is not even a crowbar. It is, honest to goodness, a 4-foot tall yellow wrecking bar that I have had since the mid 80s. And I have destroyed everything with this. I have torn down buildings, barns, restaurants. I've moved multi-ton pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
And it is because I know every aspect of this tool and what it can do.
That was gonna go ahead, Max. That was gonna be something I wanted to say.
I was going to say, is it also due to the fact that like it's no longer as aerated as like in a newer tool? Like for example, like going back to like the whole martial arts example of how a pounded out Joe staff is hardier because it's not as aerated.
Considering this is just a slab of metal, I'm going to say no. However, I will give you, I have got a couple of wooden handle hammers that are, 2 of them at least, that are well in excess of 40 years old. And depending upon the wood they made the handle out of, because like your yellow pines and stuff like that have a tendency to get harder with age.
Right. Well, I was going to say, when you said something else, I think, Max, is Allan, you said it, the familiarity, whatever you
Yeah,
want to say.
familiarity. Yeah.
That plays a role. I like, for example, my pry bar, I don't even have to look at it. I'm swinging, and I know I'm going to hit it because I'm just, I'm so used to its contours and everything else. And I remember being on a job site where they had a miter saw, and, there was already one set up, so I didn't even bother pulling mine out. But the trigger's in a different spot, the fence adjusts differently than mine, and those little things, you get it slows you down a little because you're like, oh, wait a minute, I want to make sure, you want to, every tool has its own, features. So when you get used to it, there's something to be said about that too.
A couple of weeks ago, I was helping out on a job, and this dovetails right into tiling because we were tiling a bathroom. So they had a wonderful tile saw set up, but it took a minute to figure out the actual cut. Because again, you can't cut anything, you can only remove material.
Okay.
So, did you cut right on the line? How did it measure? Because I need a 12-inch exact tile. I got to cut 2 inches off of this. I don't need the width of the blade in from the 12 inches. I need 12 inches. So
that's a quarter-inch swing one way or another.
Exactly. It makes a big, especially in small jobs, that makes a huge difference. So you get used to how your tools age and work.
Yeah.
You get used to the width of the blade. You get used to, especially with hammers, the arc of the swing, because the handle's only so long. The head's a certain size. It's a certain weight. And this is why, for those of you who wonder why your grandpa was so cranky about his tools, it's because
think of that.
They were his tools.
He had decades of attachment to those tools.
And let me tell you something. If you touched your grandmother's fabric scissors, you were risking your life.
Yeah, or don't even get near Allan's kitchen.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, that was actually a good point, Max, and we'll probably revisit this because I think that there's something to be said for that. Although the saw thing, I don't know if that's a DIY type of thing. That I could see that going badly.
There are lots of
messing with those blades.
We've got several very cute, wonderful hardware stores in the area that'll be happy to sharpen it for you.
Okay. Now, that was a nice feel-good tool tale, but when we come back, I have kind of a scary warning tale about a pressure washer.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I just want to tell you both, good luck. We're all counting on you.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Oh, thank you. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, today is National Donut Week, and nobody has chimed in. I'm surprised. Agent 732 doesn't have an opinion about his favorite donut.
Because he hasn't woke up and had his favorite donut yet.
Well, he's going to miss out if he doesn't get on the stick here. And I can't believe Deuce has, some of these regulars, they need to,
I don't want to know what his favorite donut is.
Yeah, that's true.
I've seen his Roomba.
Yeah. And also later in the show, if you've got any questions or concerns about the foundation of your home, including your basement, your crawl space, or if you have a slab, today our friends from Groundworks are coming in the second half of the show, and it's a great time to learn about that and to take advantage of their expertise. So in a minute, we're going to get back to our tool tale of woe with the pressure washer. Before we do that, though, speaking of expertise, let's talk about our good buddy, Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. This is, actually, I kind of like this one. Aside from the pounding there, what is this one called?
We March at Dawn.
Okay, so if you haven't heard Tool Talk in a while, as you know, we're on the hunt for some new walk-up music for Jay, and I think this one is actually a realistic contender. This sounds like a serious type piece of music when you're walking up to the job site to take care of business and rip
a
off that.
hard-hitting opener with punchy, distorted guitar chords.
Okay, so mark that one down. I think Jay's going to like this. Anyway, getting back down to business, if you have any, Jay Hill is all about the exterior protection of your home, from roofing to gutters to siding to windows. These are all systems, and they all have to work together to protect the outside of your home. And we always lean heavily, though, into his roofing expertise because Jay is he's always 5 stars with the Better Business Bureau. He's a GAF Master Elite Installer, and these systems are so well engineered. I mean, roofing has really come a long way in the last 40 years or so. These systems are so well engineered that they offer lifetime transferable warranties, and so. That's talk about backing up your product. So, but also, Jay, I should also mention that he is also all about all the remodeling needs you have in your home, except kitchens and bathrooms. He doesn't want to do that, but everything else is fair game. The other thing that sets Jay apart is that he is a former insurance agent, and that has been very useful to people like Allan and I, where maybe you have some problems with your home that you're not sure whether it's covered by your homeowner's insurance. Well, get Jay over there. He should be the first person you call. It's a free consultation. He's going to look over the situation, and if there is a path forward with the homeowner's claim, it's going to save you all sorts of money. This is what we pay our homeowners insurance for, and it is a process, and Jay can help you navigate that process. And it's another thing that he offers in his business, which sets Jay apart. So Jay is also he always encourages you to contact him directly. And so reach out to Jay at 901-484-5645 or go to bigmroofingandremodeling.com. All right, so you guys, so before the break, we were talking, well, actually, we segued into a pretty nice tool tale. Max was asking about, some of these older tools. Well, Allan, my wife sent me a picture that I was tasteful enough not to post because I don't want to ruin people's breakfast. But our neighbor Judy, give her a shout out. She was using a pressure washer, minding her own business, and my wife sent this picture. And Allan, you saw the picture. This has to be. She had a gash on her leg that came from a mishap with this pressure washer, and it was kind of confusing. So this thing had to be. It was at least, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch wide. This was a big gash, and also 6 or 7 inches long. This was a huge. She's going to have a permanent scar with this. But what I couldn't figure out is, I'm like, okay, how could water cut you this badly?
Oh,
well, for one thing, we know that pressurized water is used to cut through metal, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at a CNC machine, that is water cutting metal.
And I said, well, the only upside is it looks like this wound was being cleaned as it was being implemented, as it was being.
Well, you've had like a deli sandwich, right?
Sure.
You've seen that absolute perfect cut.
Oh, I've
like for prepackaged sandwiches. Right. Well, they're not cut by a blade. For the stuff that comes out of, for like vending machines and things,
right.
They are cut by a micro-thin stream of water.
Didn't you say bread is cut that way?
Yes.
Now, that's mind-blowing because you'd think it would make it soggy, but I guess it's thin enough where
that water is going so hard, so fast, it just cuts perfectly. So water can be exceedingly dangerous under pressure.
Well, but I did get clarity because I was like, okay, this is insane. That wasn't the cause once we got some clarity.
Right.
So here was the cause. So we know that I'm thinking, okay, with your average pressure washer, there's a connection. Okay, you connect the hose to the motor. The motor has a hose coming to the handle. So there's a couple of connections that go on, and usually they're like a quick release type.
Right.
Well, apparently this one wasn't attached. The one by the handle was not attached well. And we've seen this before. Like if you take like a fire hose, you ever wonder why firemen, there's 2 or 3 guys holding the fire hose because of the water pressure, right? Well, apparently the connection at the handle came loose or it broke or something. And this thing just started spinning. What did you call that, Allan? The Cobra dance or something like that?
Yeah, we used to call that the Cobra dance.
But even with that, this is a pretty horrible gash. Just that loose thing, it came off the handle and the pressure swiped it across her leg. That's still something to pay attention to, man. So I don't know what we, I guess when you're connecting your pressure washer, you better pay attention to all of those connections. So I mean, it was kind of scary. I was glad it didn't hit her in the face or something. So.
Now, is what makes water deadly if like highly pressurized? Is it because it's sort of like in a semi-solid state, because it's not in ice form and it's not in liquid form where it's neither hard nor soft, but it's like concentrated? It kind of makes me think a little bit of a lightsaber.
I think it's all about how much pressure is being applied. I mean, if it's a pressurized stream of water, it's just like anything. I remember in shop class too, Max, they used to tell us because kids would play. We had those air compressors that you would use to blow off things, and sometimes you blow off the sawdust from your clothes and everything. And they said, do not put that against your skin.
Yeah.
because you could blow pressurized air into your skin.
You could actually peel your skin off with it,
right?
yes.
Or get air into your system, which is dangerous.
Because I've heard about like not using
or
a syringe that has air
blowing
in
out
it.
sinuses or eardrums or popping an eyeball out.
Yeah.
Anything under pressure. When you're really wandering over into my safety expertise,
right?
And it is anything under pressure. Even if you kink a hose over, you are taking a chance that something is going to give, and when something gives, it's going to transfer all of the energy, all of the potential energy into that one tiny little spot. So now if that one tiny little spot is a screwdriver, it can wind up stuck to your 2x4.
Yeah.
If it is a paint can, it can explode all over the room. If it is, so I mean, we keep going into, but more and more things use pressure these days.
Sure.
You can buy just a pressure sprayer for pennies, just about, but it has a tight enough seal. You pump it up, and you can begin spraying whatever it is you want to spray. But that pressure is basically a bomb.
Yeah, and it's unpredictable. You don't know what direction it's going to go. So, did you have something else, man?
No, I was going to say something about bombs, but
No,
Allan
let's skip that.
He stole my thunder.
All right, but anyway, a tale of caution, and I would say this even goes for your garden hose, anything, just anywhere there's going to be pressure, make sure the connection is secure and not flopping around.
Good and clean. Yep.
Right. And so anyway, that was it. And we were, like I said, we didn't want to ruin your breakfast, so I didn't post the picture of the wound. But anyway, okay. Well, let's change course here, Max.
Oh, the humanity.
You can burst eardrums.
Yeah, we're gonna find out what Allan did this week besides shooting a cowboy movie. And luckily, you didn't get injured. Hey, Al, I mean, you do stunts. You do your own stunts too.
I used to. This time I cleaned my own bar.
Okay.
So it wasn't
Not the
anything all
most
that dangerous.
dangerous shoot
Not
you've
the
ever
most
had.
dangerous thing I've ever done. However, I am looking forward to having a little conversation with our Groundworks guys because I have been experiencing a lot of the newfangled tiling technologies.
Okay.
And one of them is a separator sheet to remove the motion of the house from the tile you're putting in the bathroom.
A separator sheet.
A separator sheet. I'll send you a picture of it, Joe. And it is a semi-rigid plastic with a fibrous coating on one side and little dimples on the other. And the idea is that, especially if you have a crawl space, your house has a lot of motion.
Well, I think we touched on that a couple weeks ago, and now we're going to get more of the inside scoop now that you're actually putting the tile in. So, all right, well, stand by. This is going to be riveting. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Hey, this isn't faux dive. This is a dive.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, once again, a reminder that this is National Donut Week, and I'm horrified, Allan, that nobody's chimed in. I'm just going to tell you my favorite donut. I don't know if it counts, but what are those vanilla cream filled powdery donuts? There's like 8 million calories to those.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's called a gut buster, man.
With a glass of milk. That is definitely my favorite donut. So I know our buddy Brandon Olmsted is a fan of the maple bacon donuts.
I was say Brandon, our buddy, loves that maple syrup bacon.
And
he is down with that.
Poor Max has celiac, so he can't eat donuts anymore. So, but we want to know what yours are, and it's a week-long celebration. So feel free to let us know. But before the break, Allan, we were finding out this week, in Allan's Week in Review, you were doing some tiling. Now these tiles look much more civilized. You were putting down. It looks. If I had to guess, let me see if it looked to me like they were about 4 inches by 16 inches.
How close? It was a 6 by 16.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So you were in the it's
on
a
the
lot better
floor,
than that
so-
4 foot by 2.
Yeah, that stuff was insane that you were putting on the walls. So.
That stuff was amazing.
But
However,
you were talking about the leveling technology and the barrier that you put between the tile and the sub floor.
Right. But well, because this is a combo project. Part of this building is very old, part of it's not quite so old, and some of it's brand new.
Okay.
So the particular section we're in with this bathroom happily didn't need much leveling. So it was, a little touch up here and there, no big deal. But then we went in with this new barrier. And I've got to admit, it's been a while since I've done this much bathroom work. And we didn't have these 20 years ago. So, we put this down. It goes down over mastic just like, any other tile you would put down, but it gave you a different feel on the tile. So, like when you put the subsurface under a floating floor. It's got a kind of a cushioned feel to it. It's not quite.
It reminds me of a yoga mat because my wife has yoga mats all over the house. So it's
okay, you're familiar with that. All right.
No, but there's enough. It holds it in place, but it's got enough cushion that you actually notice the cushion when you're walking.
For the tile effect, what it does is it provides a bit of a moisture barrier between the crawl space underneath and the area I'm working in the bathroom. It also provided, especially if you're working in an older home where different parts of the home move different directions.
Right.
And you and I have talked about this for 10 years. Your house moves, people.
Oh, yeah.
And what this does is it provides a separator, a separating layer to get, now you're going to go back in with your adhesive, your mastic, and then you're going to put down your tiles. So that has been the process. However, there are now a variety of tile leveling technologies besides just your level.
Okay.
So what? All right.
Because sometimes you have to use shims. You have to use.
All right. Now let's talk about that for a second. Here we go. So we're used to using the little spacers, right? You put a little spacer in, that way your tile is all laid out evenly, so you got clean grout lines. Well, then they came up with the spacers that you could leave under the grout.
Right.
Well, now they have a spacer that you leave under the grout, under the tile. However, it has a little fin that sticks up, and you can and I've seen 3 different systems. One of them has a clip that goes under that you tap into place, which pulls those 2 tiles even. There's another one that you can use in the corner that actually has a spin down. It looks like something out of Mousetrap. It looks like a little tiny cage.
I bet our friends at Groundworks use something similar, but to level up a foundation. I'm going to have to ask them when they get in here.
I'm dying to know.
Yeah.
So, but I've again, it's been years since I did this, and I'm really fascinated by these systems. So I chose the one that looks like Mousetrap.
Yeah.
And you just tighten these down, and what it does is it brings those tiles into a level setting.
Yeah.
So that instead of, you remember the old days, we just wiggle the tile, move the tile, lift the tile, put some more mastic under the tile, all of that. Now you just put down your adhesive and set your tile, tighten these babies down to where they're nice and tight and level. I will tell you the fallacy to this system.
Okay.
Is if it's going to take you more than a day.
What do you mean?
Well, because
if it's going to take it, or it's going to.
Well, if it's going to take you more than a day to lay all the tile, make sure that you prep it for the next day. Make sure you don't have any adhesive showing. Make sure that you've got your spacers already in place,
right,
and be ready to go. That way you can keep the same level.
I got you. Yeah.
Because I had to do a little backtracking on bathroom number 1. Wasn't a big deal. It was just a couple of tiles. But I've learned. I've learned my lesson.
Here's what I would say too, and I don't do enough tiling where I guess for me, Allan, when I do tile, it's so infrequent that every time I go to the store, there's new technology that I didn't have last time. But I would say one of the main maybe rookie mistakes that I see. Because tiling is not rocket science. You know, a lot of people, you could do it yourself, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And when I'm looking at a tile like what you were putting down, 6 inches wide by 16, if there's even any variation under that where the tile's rocking or something, sometimes I've seen people that they're like, well, I'll just put extra adhesive under that. Well, then the adhesive doesn't dry, and then you walk on it and you crack the tile. And you know what I mean? It's like, or they build it up so much that tile is stable, but now the one next to it is a 1/4 inch lower than the other. So it's a real finesse. There's a lot of finesse involved, and the bigger the tiles you're using, the trickier it is.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so this system sounds pretty good, actually.
I've enjoyed doing it. I will say though, it will slow you down by half.
Yeah, but okay.
However,
maybe the prep is slowing you down by half, but
then you got to go back and take it all off.
Yeah.
However, the grouting was so much easier because it was all lined. There was no wiggle, fidget. Oh dear, we got to pop a tile out. We got to put a tile in.
Yeah.
Went so much easier and faster. So I'm going to say the leveling systems and the new tech do add some work.
Right.
However, I think you're going to like the outcome.
Well, it's just better. Yeah. I mean, and if you're there to get tile done as fast as possible, you shouldn't be the one doing it. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, probably.
Just get the thing done correctly, especially a floor. And especially with something like this, because there's nothing worse than having it split or, or if there's gaps, I've seen it too, where somebody didn't put enough adhesive and water finds its way under there, and that's not good either.
Well, that was part of this new barrier, because if you did have water penetrate, there is a waterproof layer between the tiles and the subfloor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm gonna when we get our guest in here from Groundworks, I'm gonna ask about that. So.
Yeah, because it was, like I said, it was different. It was more work than I expected, but I think I'm gonna be really happy with the full outcome.
Okay, and it's not very expensive, right? It's pretty affordable.
It's all tile. This one of these things people get surprised at. Tiling is not the cheapest project. It is a little bit expensive because you can spend whatever you want to spend on tiles.
Yeah, and
there's cheapy tiles all the way up to I'm installing a Rolls Royce.
There you go. So, all right. Well, this is going to be good. As we said, folks, we've got Jon coming in from Groundworks. He's going to be here for the whole second hour, I hope. I don't know. So if you got any questions about the foundation of your home or any concerns, this is the time to get in touch. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com. Our pal Max over there behind the glass. And in the house with for a long overdue visit is the sales manager from Groundworks, Jon Baugh. Baugh?
That's right. Yeah, you got it right.
Well, it's one of those. There's like a lot of vowels in here. I didn't want to mispronounce it. So, hey, but Jon, you guys, so Groundworks, I mean, if people have been listening to News Talk 98.9, we've been hearing your commercials all over the place. We're glad to welcome you on to Tool Talk. And boy, Allan, we've been overdue for somebody that has expertise in foundation work.
Yeah, I'm tired of crawling under the houses. I'm happy to see this man.
So, folks, and what's interesting about the foundation work, you guys are almost like detectives in ways, right? Because I mean, there's things where you might have a problem with your foundation, but it manifests itself 50 feet away up on the chimney or something like that, right? So
it's 100% right. Yeah, there's a lot of times you'll see a crack, or you'll have some sort of odor, or there's a ton of little symptoms that are almost always related to something much bigger.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you don't want your foundation shifting. We're always talking, Allan, about how your house moves. Well, you don't really want much movement down there. So
well, all right, well, we're gonna. I'm just gonna dive right in on him with some jobs that I'm currently working with. So, one of the things that always gets me especially with slab foundations, if you've got a problem, is brick facing. And brick facing, for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, is when you look at a brick wall and the very quarter of an inch face, the little baked edge of the brick, is missing.
Oh.
And that is where the brick is torquing and it's cracking that little face off.
Right.
Now, if this is on your chimney, then you probably need to have your chimney reattached to the house because something is bending. And I will freely tell you that brick and mortar don't like to bend.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look over at John. I'm going, all right, so, we've got a brick house.
Right.
And you're looking at it, and they've begun to see these little pops begin to take place. And now a few happen over the years, but the next thing that's probably going to happen is going to be like a running crack.
Right. Yeah.
So they're walking around their house. All right. So it's spring, and I'm a big advocate of let's get out and go walk the house.
Okay. Yeah.
So for a slab issue or something like that, we're looking for like popped bricks or maybe a crack. Or what are some other signs that people could look for just taking a stroll around the house?
Yeah, so everything you just said is spot on, right? And then I would add, if we're talking true exterior, I would add any sort of exterior door that's sticking. Sometimes they're tough to close, sometimes they're hard to stay closed. Windows the same way. I know we're in the South, so we're not all the time just opening our windows in the summer, right? But those ones that are really tough to open or really tough to close, there may be some sort of shifting. The weakest point of the wall is always obviously going to be the window and the door. Right. So a lot of times that'll be the first sign is it'll start to stick or it'll be hard to stay closed. And then you'll see a little crack come off the corner and start, stair step up between the mortar or in the mortar. So those signs, interior drywall cracks,
Okay.
Those are good, not good symptoms, but those are symptoms that would point to foundation movement, differential settlement. Anything like that, freeze boards popping. If you ever notice, you look up there and the freeze boards are popped open, that means there's some sort of movement, right?
Some sort of torquing going on to create that space.
So if I were to tell you, or maybe not you, because you're somewhat of an expert on the Tool Talk Radio, but if I were to just talk to a regular person.
Well, you've got him fooled, don't we, Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been listening to the show.
Awesome.
But, you can go around your house and you see, well, 3 of my 4 freeze boards are pretty intact, right?
Right.
And then there's one that's popped open, right? So we think,
Tell us what a freeze board is.
So if you look up at the corner of your house where, you have your soffit and you have it's a freeze board right on top of that where those 2 boards meet or 2 sections meet.
Exactly.
Not necessarily wooden boards, but so we think when differential settlement happens, we think the house settles straight down.
No.
Which is not always the case. Sometimes it's the case, but sometimes it'll settle and twist or settle and roll. And when it does that, it'll pop that freeze board open, and that tells you, you have early signs of settlement, which is the best time to have somebody look at it, because at that point you can fix it much cheaper than it would be if if you allowed it to go and go and go. Whereas, we would have had to only address this 5 or so linear foot of movement.
Right.
As it continues to move, now we got 10, 15, 20, so it gets worse and worse and worse. So those early signs are a great way to go ahead and at least have somebody look at it, right? We do free inspections, have us come out and look at it. If there's no movement, great. Peace of mind, you can go about your life. But if there is movement, we can address it early.
Yeah, foundation problems aren't self-healing either. They don't just go away. So, but you're right. But so the other thing, John, is a lot of times people will hear the word foundation trouble or something, and immediately they're probably thinking of, oh my gosh, is this going to be expensive? And it's not always the case, right? I mean, sometimes it looks pretty horrible, but it's actually a fairly simple fix, or so
100%. That's one. Honestly, that is one of the best parts of my job. You go to somebody who they're experiencing some foundation issues, and forever, especially the older generation, they think, well, I guess we just need to burn the house down. Right. And you leave that customer, sweet Mrs. Smith, you leave her house and she's in tears because she's so happy that she thought she was going to lose her whole house, and we're able to fix it for, just so much smaller than she ever thought.
Right.
And now she's thinking, okay, I can save my house. My family can get the house. Like it was much smaller fix than I thought it was going to be. And that's a great day.
Well, and the other thing too, it's interesting because this whole notion of having a healthy foundation, a lot of it reminds me of preventative care medicine. And it's like, it's better to just do the stuff in advance and take care of yourself so you don't have these big issues. Well, to me, for example, if you have bad drainage, that, there's probably a lot of things that if you correct it now, you're going to avoid any of these problems anyway, right? So,
oh my gosh, yeah. So drainage is a huge one, right? Water, the most powerful force on earth. It's if you don't have proper drainage and you have water sitting around those footings,
oh yeah,
what do you think is going to happen, right?
Right.
The house moves contrary to what maybe people think is when that soil gets wet, it expands, and when it gets dry, it shrinks, and it does that over and over and over. It's kind of like if you ever go down to the beach and you're sitting by the water, right? When the wave comes in, that sand swells up. And when the wave goes back, the sand contracts, and it does that over and over and over. And finally, your beach chair leg, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing in a crawl space, a slab. You've got improper drainage around there and water sitting there. You're just, it's not an if but when. It's going to eventually settle because your home's sitting in a mud puddle. If this table was sitting in a mud puddle, it would sink. Well, the house weighs way more than this table.
And it's also interesting because we all here in the Mid-South, I know we don't have a lot of basements, but we do have some. Like in Midtown, some of the homes, we have a pretty wide variety of foundations, right? I mean, we have slabs, we have crawl spaces, and they all have their own dynamics.
That's correct. Yep. So there are basements. There's not as many, right? But they're out there, and they have the similar. People ask me all the time, what sort of home should I buy? What sort of foundation should I buy? And they all have different issues, so it just kind of depends, on which one you want to, be ready to tackle.
I can tell you this too. You know this, Allan. Like I grew up in Chicago. Everybody had a basement. Well, okay, basements don't come all in one shape or size because if you live at the bottom of the hill, you have totally different issues than the person that's living uphill from you.
That's true.
I learned that every time we had a serious rain because we get 4 inches of water in our basement because we were at the bottom of the hill or something. So, and concrete seems really indestructible and real, impervious, but moisture gets right through concrete, right?
Oh, it's it's like a hard sponge, right? It's porous. Water is going to come through.
Yeah.
All right. You just said a magic word there. I'm gonna cue on. You said it's like a hard sponge. Because most people think that concrete is like the cement pond on the Beverly Hillbillies, in that, you put some concrete down and water don't go anywhere. Right. And that is just horrifyingly not the case.
No, it's not the case.
It is a semi-permeable membrane. Water actually flows through the average concrete pour.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. Think about a lot of code. He's from Chicago, so a lot of code is they're going to put a membrane on the outside of the basement wall at the start of building it, right? Why would they do that if the concrete was indestructible or, impermeable?
Especially when you have dirt right up against and even that membrane, because I don't know if they did that in some of the older homes. I'm guessing they didn't,
From my understanding, around the 50s is when they started really pushing that.
They used to just paint it with tar.
That too.
Something, but
Oh, yeah. I've done both. That's kind of scary, isn't it?
And that'll expand and contract. Yeah, it's just like we said, and I'm John, I'm glad you're backing us up because we preach this from the rooftops. Your house is always moving and water is the enemy, basically. So,
That's
it. Hey, John, before we go to break, though, how do people, if they have any concerns, how do they get in touch with Groundworks?
So there's two ways, really. So there's two ways you can go online and schedule your free inspection there. You can also call our 1-800 number and talk to one of the agents and book it that way. But there's both two ways.
Okay. All right. We'll get back. We'll touch base on that when we come back. We're going to talk more about our foundations when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Ron, what was wrong with that one?
It was too perfect. It looked machine-made.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we have our friend Jon Baugh from, I'm just going to say John because I want to I'm notorious, John, for mispronouncing people's last names, so I don't want to do
called
it.
worse. That's okay.
Okay. Sales manager over at Groundworks, and it's a long overdue visit, sir. If I have one criticism of Groundworks, it's you need to get your people in here more often for visits. But other than that, if you have any issues with the foundation of your home, a basement, a crawl space, or a slab, this is a great day to get in touch. And before the break, we're going to reset the table here. If you, for one thing, okay, one great thing about Groundworks, you guys are equipped to handle any problem with a foundation. And basically, I was asking you off the air about the the area that you service, and if anybody can hear this broadcast within the you service that area, right?
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
Okay, cool. So you pretty big area. I mean, you were telling us. You might go out to Oxford or Jonesboro or really anywhere. So
yeah, a little over 2 hours in any direction from Memphis.
Okay,
so we'll go up to
perfect.
Jonesboro, Arkansas. So we travel.
And the numbers so it's groundworks.com, and you can call 866-761-9131, and you're going to be in business to set up your inspection. So. Okay, so and is this text that we got relevant, Max, or should we?
I would say so in its own respect.
Okay, so we got a text, and we always put text to the front of the line. So what do we got, Max?
We got Norman Rockwell.
Okay,
said to give you an example when installing luxury vinyl plank, we have to put down a moisture barrier when installing on a concrete slab, but not when on a conventional floor.
Okay, so. John, that's actually relevant. So he's talking about putting flooring down and keeping that moisture from getting into the concrete, or especially I'm thinking a crawl space. So that's what you want, right?
He's dealing with the rising damp. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you see problems where people didn't do that back in the day?
Yes. Well, the biggest thing there is I would recommend anybody who's remotely interested in redoing their flooring, changing their flooring, if they have a crawl space home, to have that crawl space inspected prior.
Oh,
because,
okay.
I mean, yes, I heard you guys talking earlier about putting the barrier between the tile and the subfloor. Great. And that's a great start, right? Because any moisture is coming from the top, like leaking tubs or whatever, would stop that from damaging that subfloor. But there's also water that's evaporating up into the subfloor from the other side. So if I only protected it from one side, I didn't truly protect the subfloor. And then I just invested in these, because you hit the nail on the head earlier. Tile could be anywhere from $1 to $1 million, and you just put all this investment into your brand new floor, but you didn't protect what it was sitting on. And now all that moisture in your crawl space is getting into your wood down there, rotting it, and now all that investment just kind of went, out the window because you got to redo it now and address the crawl space. So I can't tell you how many homes I went to where that brand new tile is cracking. Or you got brand new hardwood is man, it's all warped. It's what's going on with this? And you go in the crawl space and there's 87% relative humidity in it.
It's funny you say that because you're making me think. Okay, well, that little barrier right there, your flooring. Okay, underneath is one climate and environment, especially in the winter or when it's 100 degrees out, and then just directly above that is a totally other, another environment is going on, and those things are intersecting. And boy, you better have a good barrier there, I suppose.
Well, let me throw you a terrible word that we don't usually talk about with Tool Talk, and I'm going to throw in condensation.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
especially in a crawl space.
We do live in the South.
Right.
A 70 to 80% humidity day is, I don't know, like every day for at least 6 months of the year.
Right.
All right, well, guys, if you have a crawl space, that means you have an air space.
Yeah.
And that's 70 to 80% humidity. Now, what happens when you walk outside with your nice glass of iced tea?
Right, yeah, it gets all...
That ice, that condensation starts going. Well, guess what your floor is experiencing with your air conditioning?
Yeah, exactly.
And now you have a cooler floor contacting warm, moist air.
Well, John, let me ask you this, because if we have a crawl space, let's talk about, the preventative thing, because I think a slab is a little easier to understand because for example, if you have gutters and that aren't working, and you have water just rushing under, and you can see the erosion. Well, it's not always as obvious with the crawl space. So, what would you say is the the healthiest crawl space situation you can think of?
Well, there's two types of moisture that are going to get in your crawl space. He hit the nail on the head that most people don't think about. It's the condensation, right? Everybody, most people would assume I'm going to have some groundwater seepage that's going to come in the crawl space. This is when it rains in your house, right? That everywhere, if you remember when you were a kid, you'd be out in the yard splashing through puddles. That water doesn't want to percolate out there. That soil's been there for 2,000 years. When they build a crawl space home, the first thing they do is dig a big hole in the ground. Right. They pour the footings, they come back with all of it, and then they backfill right next to the house with dirt, right? So even if the house is 30 years old, 40 years old, 20 years, it doesn't matter. That soil is 20 or 30 years old. The soil out in the middle of the yard is 2,000 years. That water is looking to go down somewhere, and it's finding that path of least resistance, almost coming down through those like coffee grinds compared to clay out there. Where your footing, where the footing meets the wall, that's a cold joint. Those aren't poured. Those are two separate pieces, right? They're not fused together. So water's going to want to come down and find that weakest point right there and come into your crawl space. I think that most people would assume that, right? I'm going to have some standing water, that kind of thing. But the condensation is almost like an invisible enemy, right?
Right.
So he says that on a good day in the summer down here, we're going to be at 70, 80% humidity, and that's true.
Yeah.
The problem is that your house breathes like a chimney. So it's sucking air in through the crawl space and up through the house, like a stack effect.
Right.
So the issue is that on average, your crawl space is going to be about 20 degrees cooler than the air is outside. And that makes sense, right? It's underground, it's in the shade. You have your HVAC running through there, making the temperature even cooler. Well, for every 1% relative humidity, for every 1 degree in temperature difference, spikes relative humidity 2.2%. So if it's 20 degrees cooler, you're going to have roughly 40% higher relative humidity when the air from the outside comes in and hits the crawl space air. So yeah, we're at 70% on a good day in the summer, and I say, well, we're going to add 40% to that. Now we have 110. You can't have 110. It condenses. And people may say, well, that's just condensation. Yeah, but you got 1,000 square feet of condensation.
Well, how do you compensate for that? Because I'm picturing fans and ventilation and things. It seems to me the trick here is to keep air moving, right?
Well, the vents, fans, sand. Some people, you put a dehu down there, and I always tell people, if you don't, there's one thing you don't do.
Yeah.
Don't just stick a dehumidifier down there. It's almost, you may as well just put the dehumidifier in the backyard. It's going to run all the time. It's not going to work. So
it's not cut out. Yeah. Why rely on the dehumidifier?
Well,
yeah,
I think a lot of it is they just don't know. They're just, hey, it makes sense. I put a dehumidifier in the basement. Why wouldn't I just put a dehumidifier in the crawl space? Right?
It reminds me a little of like you have a heater and an air conditioner in a room, and it's like, well, it's getting really cold in here. Let me turn the heater on in the middle of summer, and then, well, it's getting hot. Let me turn the,
right.
It's fighting. It's a useless fight, instead of, okay. Anyway.
Yeah. But the condensation is a huge one. And,
to me, that would be the deal breaker. Right?
Well, if I ask you, what does mold need to live?
Right.
Food, water, air, just like us. All right. The air, we can't take that away. That's what we breathe. The food is any inorganic material, which is your whole subfloor, all the wood down there. It's the water that we need to control. And if we could dehumidify the mold, it doesn't have an opportunity. Mold only needs about 60% relative humidity to live, right?
Right.
And we just said that 70% on average, we spike that 40%. It's perfect breeding ground for mold. So we need to change the environment down there.
And it's also a perfect breeding ground for bugs. Bugs like nice, soft, wet wood, right?
They need moisture too.
And so that's why we've said in the past when we've talked about Groundworks that you may have a little stream of a little trail of ants going up and down a section, and maybe that's another indicator, right? So it's like, there's 100%. A lot of signs. So
bugs and mold need the same things to, they like the same environment.
Right, they're just like us, I guess, in a way. So yeah, but okay. So if you want to talk to Groundworks and get them out there for a free inspection, you can go to groundworks.com. or call 866-761-9131. And so, so airflow is the key to a healthy is the key to a healthy.
After the break, we can kind of touch on a couple things.
Okay. Cool.
In our belief, what the best practice.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, we're going to continue the conversation when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Lisa and I built your room.
But I don't like this clown.
I wouldn't take it down if I were you. It's a load-bearing poster.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
I had a Led Zeppelin poster when I was a kid that was the same principle. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning. Here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com. Our pal Max over there behind the glass, and in the house, sales manager from our friends over at Groundworks, Jon Baugh. And John, I'm one of the things I love about doing the show, because we know a lot. Allan knows more than me, probably. He's sort of a dictionary, but I'm always happy to learn. And you taught, off the air, I actually learned something that I didn't know. We're talking pretty heavily about crawl spaces now, because I would say crawl spaces, there's a lot of homes out here in the Mid-South with crawl spaces.
Oh, yes.
And my idea, I guess maybe I'm confusing roofing situations with crawl spaces, because we always talk about letting your attic breathe, getting airflow through there. I assumed it was the same with your crawl space to control humidity and everything like that, but I was a little wrong-headed, right?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say wrong-headed. I could see why a lot of people would think airflow. Let's just circulate the air. Let's get the air moving, or let's get the air out of there. Let's get the moisture out of there. But the ventilation in a crawl space is a little outdated. I guess if you really want to back up all the way to, 70 years ago, when we didn't have indoor plumbing, we didn't have HVAC, we didn't have crawl spaces either. The houses were just put on columns or a post, and that's how the house was made up. There was no crawl space walls.
Okay.
When we started getting HVAC under there, and started getting plumbing in there, we're like, well, we got to keep the critters out of there. If we go down there and messing with us, we started putting these walls up. Instantly, they realized we got a humidity problem, and it's causing issues. So they do things, at the time, the best methods they have, well, let's put a piece of plastic on the ground. We'll stop vapor from evaporating. Or let's start putting these vents in the crawl space walls. That'll cause airflow and let the moisture out. But really what we've determined over all these years is your house kind of breathes like a chimney. It's pulling air in through the crawl space and going up through your subfloor into your home.
Right.
It's kind of like if you were a kid on a second-story home, you could smell what your mom was cooking for dinner, right? Because all that air rises, right? So what we've determined is the best recipe to keep a crawl space dry all the time is to encapsulate the crawl space. So this process starts, the first thing we'll do is seal up all the vents, any kind of cracks, crevices. We seal all those up. We come back with our liner, mechanically fasten it to the wall, right? Obviously, tape and water are not conducive, so we mechanically fasten it to the wall. We can mechanically wrap the columns, and then we seam it at the bottom with the vapor barrier. So you're truly keeping the outside air outside and the inside air inside.
Outside critters, which is
critters.
another good thing. Yeah.
And then we cap that off with a three-way air system that we put down there, specifically made for the crawl space. So everybody wants to call it a dehumidifier, and it does dehumidify the air. But that's not, I wouldn't say the only and most important thing it does. It has a humidistat on it. We set it at 55%. So if the humidity in your crawl space gets to 55, it turns on and starts pumping water out. But it also purifies the air. It's got a Mervate filtration system on it. It cleans any kind of airborne allergens, bacteria, any sort of mold spores. It cleans it down to 2 microns inside. So because, again, all the air you're breathing, 50% of the air you're breathing inside your house is coming from the crawl space. So now your home has cleaner air. And the third thing, it doesn't circulate the air, right? Like if you got a really nice home and with nice doors, nice windows, but you turn the HVAC off to go to the beach for a week, to save money on power, when you come back, it's really sticky and stuffy in there, right? The same thing would happen in that crawl space because we sealed everything off.
Right.
So I have to have that air system to circulate the air as well. So that would be the perfect solve to a crawl space or a home that has a lot of high relative humidity that's causing mold, rot, and odor of the subfloor.
That's cool to know, because I was just thinking airflow is the answer, but it's not necessarily. So, well, I guess corrected, like the airflow that you put up, where you're controlling the humidity and everything.
Right.
So,
that's why I said you weren't all the way wrong, right? Because there is airflow associated with it, but if we just did the airflow without sealing everything off, we're just pushing around high humidity all over. We're not really doing anything. We're not accomplishing anything.
Okay, so maybe for the home now, but for the average homeowner though, like Allan, you always talk about walking around the house. So okay, if you walk around the house and you have a crawl space and you see the vents are, you have all these vents, or maybe even the trap door is just open and anything, that's not good, right? I mean, so.
Right, and that's why I always tell people, look, take advantage of the free inspection. If you're suspicious, give us a call. It doesn't cost anything. We'll come out and look at it. And the best thing is, we're not going down there and giving you our word. We're going down there and taking dozens of photos. We're using hygrometers. We're using moisture meters. We're using a series of diagnostic tools. And we'll come back down, sit at your table with you, and show you all these photos, show you all these readings that we got. And that way, it's your home and it's your money. At that point, you can decide, hey, I do want to seek some help. I do want to get some of these things fixed. And if you don't, you don't, right? But at least you know what conditions are down there. Because I mean, I wouldn't want to just crawl around my crawl space. If
you couldn't pay me to go in there, man. I'm not a crawl space fan. I get claustrophobia in there. But John, what you're describing sounds a lot like a very comprehensive visit to your doctor. They're running tests. It's precise tools and instruments that you're using to determine this stuff.
That is a spot on. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, these symptoms, right? You see these symptoms, but they're related to other things. Right. For example, you have a sagging floor or a bouncing floor, or, you put a golf ball down your living room floor and it rolls to the hallway, right?
Sure.
That's a sign that something's going on down there, right? And there's only 3 reasons why a floor would do that: sag, slope, bounce. There's only 3 reasons. There's either an inadequate structural design down there, you have some sort of overspanning, on the joist, or the main beams, girder beams are overspanned, or the third is, and it's most common, is moisture. Right? It's like a spaghetti noodle. You put a spaghetti noodle over a pot, before you put it over the pot, I guess, it's nice, rigid, firm. You put it over a steaming pot, and that moisture is hitting into the spaghetti noodle. It starts to sag a little bit, right? So the moisture gets in the cellulose fibers of that wood down there and elongates them, and over time they start to sag. So it goes back to what you just said. These symptoms, not that I'm not a doctor, but it was a good analogy.
Yeah.
We go in, we look at the symptoms, we determine exactly what's causing these symptoms, so that we can give you an exact solution, so you never have to worry about it again.
And every home's different. I mean, everybody, depending, like we said, you live on a hill, or you live on maybe you have a lot of trees. Maybe there's just a lot of factors. Maybe you have a crawl space that's 4 feet tall. Maybe you have a crawl space that's 12 inches tall. So, I mean, it just depends. So.
Every one of them's different. Yeah, you're 100% right. Every one of them's different. Even if the house is the same, where is the house located on that, that area? Is it high on a hill? Is it low? And they all have different. So, if you just want, and the truth, have an expert out there, like us, we'll come out there and tell you exactly what's going on. And then at least then you have the information. You can do with the information what you want, but at least you have it.
Right, exactly. So get in touch with Groundworks. Go to groundworks.com, or you can call 866-761-9131. You have a pretty big service area, too. Basically, if you're listening to the show on the radio and you can hear us, even if you're, out towards Jackson, I guess that you cover that area. So
yep, we're in Jackson every day.
Okay, cool. Hey, so, now we've talked quite a bit about crawl spaces, but, a lot of us have a slab. And Allan, I don't know how old I was before I realized that I thought my house was just a slab, and that I had my flooring, there was like a little vapor barrier, and then it was like basically over the concrete. I only learned like years later that actually what I actually have is a slab. And then there's, I guess you could say like a 2x4. There's like a 4-inch space of a subfloor, and then there is my flooring. I don't know. And, I live in my house has an interesting history.
Like an elevated.
It's elevated, flooring. And there's pipes, and there's vents, and there's things that run underneath it. I don't know if you've encountered that, but
that's unique. I don't know that.
I assure you, Joe's house is unlike any other house you have ever met.
It's kind of
though, Joe. Like,
it
I
was
don't hate the
haven't seen
idea
that?
because if you have if a normal slab, right? If you have a plumbing issue,
right,
that is problems. You got to. I mean,
you're cracking slab. Yes.
Yeah. You got to break everything open. Oh my gosh. But with yours, I've never seen it. That's very unique, but I guess they would just have to take the hardwood up.
I mean, I've taken the floor out, so I've seen it with my own eyes. So you're saying maybe this wasn't up to code, huh?
I don't know.
Codes
change every 3 years.
Well, maybe my house isn't a good example. So when we're talking about keeping a healthy slab, then what are some things to think about there? I mean, obviously, if you got a giant crack going down the middle of your floor or separated flooring or something, or
slabs are the hardest to do in a preventative way. Because I can't just go under your slab and check everything out, right? You typically are only going to know something's wrong with your slab when you do see those signs. So when you do see the crack, when you do see the movement, that's when you know. And at that point, we're in a reactive phase versus a preventative phase, like we're in a crawl space. So that's why it's so important. You guys talked about it earlier too. I'm not saying walk your house every week or every month, but just every once in a while, just walk around. If you see some of these symptoms, have it addressed early before, for example, if that corner of the slab house is settling and there's a kitchen there, well, when the footer goes down, the slab goes down with it. Right. And what's under there? Plumbing.
Sure.
And so I could fix it before it damages that plumbing, which means I could save you thousands of dollars.
Right.
Before you have to address that.
Although I will say this, John, my approach too is if you walk around your house after a torrential rainstorm, that's not a bad time because you'll see where the water's puddling and where things are eroding, and I mean, that's an easy.
I mean, be strategic when you agree. Yeah.
Okay. So once again, get in touch. Go to groundworks.com. Call 866-761-9131. All right, we're going to continue talking to John about crawl space, foundation, and basement issues when we come back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
This on? Hey, listen up down there. That thing's called an elevator, not a bathroom.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning. Well, Allan, if you don't clearly mark the construction site, you don't know. Here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com, our pal Max over there behind the glass, and in the house, our friend Jon Baugh from his sales manager over from Groundworks, and with a long overdue visit, not to keep
not to nitpick,
not to
anything,
keep nitpicking,
Joe,
John, but you guys need to drop in a little more often, man. People have foundation issues.
I'm learning. I'm taking it in. It won't happen again.
Hey, John, we've been talking about protecting the foundation of your home. Which, okay, first of all, the one thing about that is it's not negotiable. You have to take care of the foundation of your home. Put on your big boy pants. You own a home. You got to take care of it. Well, you said something off the air that I think should be repeated. I mean, early detection is the key, right? I mean,
man, 100%. I talked about earlier, the best day of the job is when you go tell sweet Mrs. Smith that the fixer foundation is only going to cost this fraction of a cost. That's a great day. But one of the worst days on the job is you go to a house that it's too far gone, and now supporting it or lifting it or that's out the window because it's too far. I tell customers all the time that, I'm glad I know it's not fun to be talking about this right now on a Thursday afternoon. I get it. It's hard to call me. But I'm glad you did, because I go to customers all the time that I have to say, I wish you would have called me 5 years ago. I wish you would have called me 8 years ago, because we could have done this at it's going to be 10 times what I would have had to charge you back then. Now, I got to rebuild your whole floor framing system, or I got to redo the whole right side of your basement wall now because it's fallen into the floor, right?
Right.
If you can catch it early, it's never gonna get cheaper than it is today. Mm-hmm. That's it's scary. I get it. I truly get it. It's scary to have me out there, and it's not how you want to spend your Thursday afternoon talking to me about how your foundation's failing you. But if you can catch it earlier, you are doing yourself such a favor. And again, at least you just have the information. Right?
You want, and it's free. I mean, you're not charging for this consultation, and the fact that you bring in diagnostic equipment, you're running, humidity sensors and everything else through there, and you can show them what you found. I mean, like we said, it's like a free comprehensive doctor's appointment or something.
That's right.
So, and sticking with that analogy, I would here's another question for you. So, if somebody calls you out and they do you do the inspection and you get all the data, I'm guessing there's probably situations where it might be, okay, this is something you're going to have to think about in a year or two, or maybe if you just fix that flower bed over there, maybe that'll help avoid disaster or something. I don't know.
Yes, there's I guess two things on that question. One, there's always phases to it. Like, this is a hypothetical. Let's say you have two corners settling. Right. You don't necessarily have to fix both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. Like if your car needs 4 new tires and you only have the money for 3 new tires, is your car safer with the 3 new tires versus no new tires?
Right.
It is. And then secondary, there, you can have the information, think about it, and there's a couple things you can do to sort of slow down or prevent some of the things. You can't stop it all the way, but so again, I think at least having the information, right? Like if I was the consumer, at least I have the information and I know what to expect in the future. I can plan for it. If I don't know anything, I think most people can take good news and bad news. They don't want to be surprised.
To me, the worst thing too is not knowing, because whatever you imagine is usually going to be a lot worse. And that's the stuff at 3 a.m. that you're thinking about keeping you awake. And at least if you have the information, even if it's not the information you wanted, at least you have it.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of times it is a simpler solution, a cheaper solution than people think. I think they put off calling because they are concerned that it's going to be, I may as well just burn the house down or this, that, the other. And that's all it takes to fix it. And,
right.
And I wish I would have called you last year, And so, again, I just encourage you to catch it early, have us come out, at least get the information. And then with that information, you can do with it what you want. It's your house and it's your money, but at least you know.
Well, I want to throw in, it's more than just your house, because I work with a lot of commercial clients.
100%. Yep.
And, it's Bob's Warehouse, but it's 50,000 square feet of Bob's Warehouse. And guess what? Commercial buildings have all the same issues as a residential business.
They do.
They do. And the other thing is, a lot of commercial businesses forget weight ratios.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So when you park the 20 forklifts over here.
I was in this one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right. The reason I wanted to mention this is they came out and they poured the slab.
Mm-hmm.
That slab is X number of inches thick. It is designed to handle X load.
Mm-hmm.
And depending upon what you're doing as to how deep they poured it, how they reinforced it, there's lots of things that go into this. Well, nobody tells you this 10 years later,
100%,
20 years later, 50 years later. We have commercial buildings, especially here in the Mid-South, that are, post-World War II.
Sure, yeah.
All right, I'm old. I'm not quite that old.
Right.
But, there are buildings around here that are now considered old and past their life that I will build. So, you look at it and kind of go, So when these companies move into these things and they begin moving things around and changing things, never a bad idea to get an inspection.
Never a bad idea. And again, never a bad idea to get the inspection when you are thinking about moving into it or purchasing it. But at the same time, it's also never a bad idea when they have symptoms too. If you have a big warehouse where fork trucks are driving and hitting a bump every day, what is that doing to the bearings? What is that doing to how much are you going to have to absorb in cost to repair and maintain these fork trucks? That's just one example. Because you're 100% right. They originally poured the slab to hold X. And then over time, people come in and put this in there and put that in there and put this in there. And now there's 60,000 pounds sitting in there where it was never meant to hold that. Well, what's happening is over time, that slab's not indestructible. It's going to settle, right? Moisture also causes voids down there.
Yes.
And we go to them all the time and reactive rephrase. That's usually when we get the call on commercial. Homes are sometimes 50-50, right? We're sometimes preventative, sometimes reactive. Commercial, for whatever reason, is almost always reactive. I don't know if it's most of the commercials are the landlord or the owner of the building is renting it and the renter is calling him saying, hey, we got this issue, and he's finally getting, I don't know.
Right.
But it's almost always reactive, and of course, reactive fixes are way more expensive than preventative fixes.
Right.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, we're in a dynamic real estate market, so I'm gonna make a blatant pitch for you.
Okay.
And if you are looking at real estate, if you're looking at making a purchase or making a big rental or something like that, especially, we're kind of in the season, I'm really going to kick, both of our sponsors out there and say, go look at this thing from the point of view of the roof and the point of view of the ground, because this could save you tens of thousands of dollars.
Or maybe
Just
that's not the home you want to buy,
Or maybe.
Yeah, I saw one on a recent one where we looked at a home, certain part of town, relatively newer. However, there was a hole in the front flower bed the size of a St. Bernard that went up under the slab. And I just looked at that and I went, this is not good. This is not what you want. So,
well, Jon, man, it's been great having you in. And are you our point of contact? Are you going to be visiting us again sooner? I hope.
I will commit to sooner this time. I don't want to get the blowback from avoiding it. So I'm going to come back sooner.
There you go.
All right, and it's fun. And you guys are out in South Haven, although you service the entire area. So don't worry, folks. If you can hear this, get in touch with Groundworks. Go to groundworks.com or call 866-761-9131. Well, we got to get out of here, you guys. The show is over. So on behalf of my buddy Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass and our pal Jon from Groundworks, I'm Joe Thorderson. Thanks for listening to Tool Talk Radio, and we'll see you next week.